When my sister drove away without looking back, I felt the house inhale and hold its breath. The taillights disappeared at the end of my street like two red eyes blinking shut, and I stood there with my arms wrapped around myself, a thin cardigan doing nothing to keep the early morning chill from creeping in. The kids were already inside, dragging their suitcases over the hardwood like they owned the place, arguing about who got the window seat in the guest room. My sister had kissed my cheek, pressed her forehead to mine the way we used to when we were girls, and said, "Just a couple of weeks, Marlene. I promise." Her voice had trembled, just a little. I noticed it then. I notice everything now, at the time. I told myself that sisters don't always owe explanations, that sometimes life just bends people in directions they didn't expect. I closed the front door and leaned my back against it, listening to the echo of my own heartbeat. The house smelled like the coffee I'd forgotten to turn off, bitter and burnt, and the faint sweetness of the kids' shampoo watermelon, I think. My sister's children, my blood. Standing in my living room with wide eyes and questions I didn't yet know how to answer. That was the morning everything changed. Though I wouldn't understand that for a while. Before all this, my life was quiet in a way that felt earned. I was 56, widowed for nearly 7 years, and finally at peace with the rhythm of my days. I worked part-time at the public library mornings, mostly, where the hush between the shelves felt like a shared secret between me and the books. Afternoons were for errands, tending my small backyard garden, and calling my mother to remind her to take her blood pressure medication. Evenings I cooked for one, ate at the kitchen table with the radio on low, and washed dishes by hand because it made me feel connected to something slower. Something real. My sister Denise had always been the opposite of me. Where I was steady, she was restless. Where I planned, she leapt. She was younger by 4 years, but she'd lived like someone racing in invisible clock-moving cities, changing jobs, falling in and out of love with the same intensity she once used to rearrange her childhood bedroom. Every summer, Denise had 2 kids, Caleb, 12, already taller than me and forever apologizing for existing, and Lila, 8, sharp as a tack with a mouth that never missed a beat. Their father had drifted out of the picture years ago, leaving Denise to juggle work, parenting, and her own unspoken disappointments. We didn't talk every day, but we talked enough. Or so I thought. The call came on a Tuesday evening while I was folding laundry. Her name lit up my phone, and I remember smiling, thinking she must have sensed I was lonely. Her voice, when she spoke, sounded like she was standing in a tunnel. "Marlene," she said, drawing my name out. "I need a favor." I laughed softly. "That's not how you start a conversation with your sister." She didn't laugh back. She told me she had a work opportunity out of town. Temporary. Important. She said it fast. Like if she slowed down, the words might catch in her throat. She asked if I could watch the kids. Just for a bit. 2 weeks, maybe 3. She said she didn't trust anyone else. She said, "You're the only one I know who'll keep them steady." I asked questions, of course I did, but she had answers ready, polished smooth. A contract job. A chance to finally get ahead. She sounded almost rehearsed. When I hesitated, she said my name again, softer this time. And I felt that old pull, the one that had me covering for her when we were teenagers. Lying to our mother about where Denise really was. Who she was really with. "Okay," I said. "Bring them over." That was Denise's gift. Making things sound reasonable, even when they weren't. The first few days were what you'd expect. School drop-offs and packed lunches. Lila insisted on sleeping with the hallway light on. Caleb woke up early and sat at the kitchen table scrolling on his phone, headphones dangling around his neck like he was ready to run at any moment. I cooked spaghetti the first night and we ate together, the sauce a little too salty. Lila wrinkled her nose and asked if her mom used sugar in hers. I told her yes, probably too much. At night, after they were asleep, I'd sit on the edge of my bed and replay Denise's voice in my head. That tunnel sound. The way she didn't hug the kids goodbye as long as she usually did. The way she avoided my eyes when I asked where exactly she'd be staying. I told myself I was overthinking. I'd always been the cautious one, the worrier. Denise had called me that more times than I could count. You see storms where there's just clouds, she used to say, but storms don't always announce themselves. The first real crack came on the fourth day. I was sorting through the kids' backpacks when I found a folded piece of paper in Caleb's math folder. It wasn't homework. It was a note written in Denise's looping handwriting. Be good for Aunt Marlene. I'll explain everything soon. I promised. Soon. The word sat heavy in my chest. That night, after I tucked Lila in and reminded Caleb to brush his teeth, again I stood alone in the kitchen, staring at that note. The clock above the fridge ticked louder than usual, each second marking time Denise hadn't accounted for. I tried calling her. Straight to voicemail. I didn't panic. Not yet. I just stood there, listening to the house breathe around me, and wondered why a sister who was leaving for a simple work trip would write a note that sounded like goodbye. Asterisk Denise didn't call back that night. Or the next morning, I told myself she was busy, out of town, in meetings. I said those words out loud while pouring cereal, like saying them might make them true. Lila chattered about a classmate who had pulled her hair on the bus. Caleb barely looked up from his phone. Life on the surface kept moving. That's the strange thing about worry. It slips into the cracks of ordinary moments and sits there quietly, waiting. After I dropped them off at school, I drove home slower than usual. Every red light felt longer. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car with the engine off, hands still on the steering wheel, and took a breath that didn't quite reach my lungs. I called Denise again. This time, the phone rang until it clicked into voicemail, her recorded voice too cheerful for the way my stomach had begun to knot. I didn't leave a message. I didn't know what I'd say that wouldn't sound like accusation. The library was quiet that morning, the kind of quiet that hums. I shelved returns, ran my fingers along familiar spines, and tried to focus on the order of things, alphabetical, predictable, comforting. But my thoughts kept drifting back to that note. I'll explain everything soon. By lunchtime, my patience with not knowing had worn thin. I texted her. Just checking in. Kids are fine. Call me when you can. The message showed as delivered. No reply. It was late afternoon when the first real sense of something being wrong crept in, not as panic, but as a chill that settled between my shoulders. I was at the kitchen sink, washing apple slices for after-school snacks when the phone rang. I grabbed it too fast, water sloshing over the edge of the bowl. It wasn't Denise. It was her mother, Marlene, she said, and I could hear the television murmuring in the background of her apartment. Did Denise call you? I closed my eyes. No, why? There was a pause. Not a dramatic one. Just long enough to tell me she was choosing her words carefully. My mother had always been like that, measuring what to say. Even when the truth pressed hard against her chest. She didn't show up for work today, she said. Her supervisor called me, said she hasn't been in touch. I felt something drop inside me. Not a crash, a quiet fall. She told me she had a contract job, I said, though now the words sounded thin. Out of town. Another pause. That's what she told me too, my mother said. But she didn't say where. We hung up not long after, both of us pretending we had other things to do. I stood in the kitchen, the apple slices forgotten, turning my phone over in my hands like it might offer some explanation if I looked at it from the right angle. When the kids came home, I kept my voice light. I asked about their day, listened as Lila reenacted playground drama with exaggerated sighs. nodded while Caleb mumbled about a quiz. I made grilled cheese for dinner, cut the sandwiches diagonally the way Denise did. It felt important somehow to keep things familiar. After dinner, while Lila colored at the table and Caleb disappeared into the guest room, I noticed something else. A habit, really. I hadn't thought much of it before. Caleb kept checking his phone, not the distracted scrolling of a bored preteen. This was different. He'd glance at the screen, type a quick response, then lock it and slide it under his leg like he didn't want anyone to see. When I asked him who he was texting, he jumped. Just a friend, he said, too quickly, from school. He shrugged. Yeah, I let it go. I'd raised my own son once upon a time. I knew when to push and when to wait. That night, after I turned off the hallway light for Lila and reminded her for the third time that her mother would call soon, I knocked gently on Caleb's door. He was sitting on the bed, phone in hand, shoulders tense. Everything okay? I asked Dot. He nodded, then shook his head, then looked at me like he was trying to decide something. Aunt Marlene, he said finally. Did Mom say when she's coming back? My throat tightened. Soon, I said. She said soon. He stared at his hands. She told me not to worry, but she said that before when things were bad. I sat beside him. The mattress dipped under my weight. What do you mean? I asked Dot. He hesitated, then shrugged again, a defensive little movement. Nothing. Forget it. I didn't forget it, Dot. The next morning, I woke up early to the sound of rain against the windows. The house smelled like damp earth and coffee grounds. I stood at the counter, staring at the raindrops racing each other down the glass, and felt that same held breath sensation I'd felt when Denise drove away after the kids left for school. I did something I hadn't planned to do. I went into the guest room. Denise's suitcase was still there, tucked neatly against the wall. She'd brought it in, unzipped it halfway, and then stopped, as if she hadn't been sure how long she'd be gone. I stood there for a long moment, my hand hovering over the zipper, arguing with myself about privacy and trust and sisterhood. Then I remembered the note. Opened the suitcase. Most of it was ordinary. Clothes folded carefully, toiletries, a paperback with a cracked spine. At the bottom, beneath a pair of shoes, I found an envelope. My name wasn't on it. No name was. Just folded paper inside, thick and official looking. I didn't open it right away. I sat on the edge of the bed, envelope in my lap, rain tapping steadily against the roof. Part of me still wanted to believe this was all a misunderstanding, that Denise would call any minute, laughing at my worry, explaining everything with that half smile she'd always used when she knew. She'd pushed things too far, but my hands were already tearing the envelope open. Inside were documents. Court papers. A notice stamped with a date from 3 weeks ago. Family court. My eyes skimmed the page, then went back, slower this time. Words began to arrange themselves into meaning. Heavy and undeniable. Custody hearing, failure to appear. I felt the room tilt. Just slightly. This wasn't a work trip. This wasn't temporary. And whatever Denise had run from, she'd left it right here with me. I folded the papers back into the envelope with trembling hands and sat there, the sound of the rain filling the silence. Somewhere deep inside, a line was forming between the sister I thought I knew and the truth I was only just beginning to see. I put the papers back exactly where I found them, as if the suitcase might notice they'd been disturbed. Then I closed the zipper and stood up, my knees weak, my thoughts louder than the rain. I didn't cry. Not yet. Shock has a way of numbing you, wrapping your emotions in cotton until they can't quite reach the surface. I washed my hands in the bathroom sink, watching the water run over my fingers. Grounding myself in the ordinary, custody hearing, failure to appear. Those words followed me. through the house like a whisper I couldn't escape. By the time the kids came home that afternoon, I'd decided on one thing. Whatever Denise was running from, I couldn't let it land on them prepared. Children sense cracks long before adults admit they're there. I saw it in the way Lila clung to my arm when she got off the bus, in the way Caleb watched my face for cues I didn't realize I was giving. That evening, I tried calling Denise again. This time, it rang twice before going to voicemail. Progress, I told myself, clinging to hope like it was something solid. I left a message, keeping my voice calm. I found some papers in your suitcase, I said. You need to call me. We need to talk. I didn't accuse. I didn't beg. I just stated the truth and waited. The call came later that night, after the kids were asleep and the house had settled into its nighttime creaks. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of tea gone cold, the envelope of court papers laid out in front of me like evidence. I wasn't ready to present. My phone buzzed. Denise's name. I answered on the second ring. Hi, she said, and I could hear the strain in her voice now. No tunnel, no rehearsed calm. Just tired. Hi, I said back. My own voice surprised me. Steady, almost gentle. There was a silence, thick and heavy. Then she sighed. You found it, didn't you? Yes, I said. I did. Another pause. I imagined her wherever she was, some borrowed couch, some cheap motel room staring at the floor, twisting her hands the way she always did when she was cornered. I didn't want you to know like that, she said. I didn't want to know at all, I replied. But here we are. She let out a shaky laugh. That sounds about right. I closed my eyes. Denise, why is there a custody hearing? And why does it say you didn't show up? The words hung between us. He filed, she said finally. Their father, out of nowhere. He said I was unstable, that I moved too much, that the kids needed consistency, and you didn't go to court, I said, my chest tightening. Why? I couldn't, she said. I panicked. I felt a flicker of anger then, sharp and sudden. You don't get to panic when it comes to your children, I said. You show up. I know that, she snapped, then softened. I know, but I was scared, Marlene. He's got money now. A lawyer. I didn't think I'd win. So you ran, I said quietly. Yes, she whispered. I ran. I rubbed my forehead, feeling the beginnings of a headache bloom behind my eyes. Where are you? I can't tell you, she said quickly. Not yet. My jaw tightened. Why not? Because if I say it out loud, it becomes real, she said. And if it's real, then I have to decide what to do next. I thought of Caleb watching his phone, of Lila asking every night when her mother would call, of my quiet house now filled with small shoes by the door and questions I couldn't answer. What happens now? I asked. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, long enough that I thought the call might have dropped. I don't know, Denise said finally. I needed time. I needed them somewhere safe. You should have told me, I said. I'm their aunt, not a storage unit for your problems. I know, she said. I'm sorry. I believed she was sorry. That was the hardest part. Denise wasn't cruel. She was overwhelmed. And overwhelmed people make selfish choices they don't know how to undo. Did he know you left them with me? I asked. No, she said. He doesn't know where they are. The words landed with a thud. You put me in the middle of this, I said. Legally, emotionally, in every way that matters. I trusted you, she said, almost pleading. I exhaled slowly. Trust doesn't mean leaving someone else to clean up your mess. She didn't argue. I think she knew I was right. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at the darkened window. My reflection looked older somehow, heavier. I thought about calling a lawyer, about calling my mother, about what would happen if their father showed up at my door. The next morning, That fear took shape. I was wiping down the counter after breakfast when the doorbell rang. A sharp, insistent sound that cut through the house's usual calm. Lila looked up from her cereal, eyes wide. "Who's that?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. Though a chill crept up my spine, I opened the door to find a man standing on my porch, tall, clean-cut, his jaw tight with something that looked like determination or anger. "Marlene?" he asked. "Yes," I said carefully. "I'm Tom," he said. "I'm Caleb and Lila's father." The world narrowed to the space between us. "I think," he said, glancing past me into the house, "we need to talk." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me before he could say another word. The porch boards were cool beneath my bare feet, still damp from the morning dew. Tom stood there with his hands shoved into the pockets of a pressed jacket, eyes scanning my face like he was looking for something confirmation, maybe. Or a crack. "They're here, aren't they?" he said. I didn't answer right away. I folded my arms, feeling the familiar tightening in my chest that came whenever someone tried to rush me into a decision. "You should leave," I said calmly. "This isn't the time." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "It's always the time when it comes to my kids." That word might hit me harder than I expected. "You filed for custody," I said. "You missed the part where you let their mother know you were coming?" His jaw clenched. "She stopped answering my calls." What was I supposed to do? Sit around and hope she came back? I thought of Denise, voice shaking on the phone. Of her fear. Of her running. Two truths colliding in the same space. "You don't get to ambush them," I said. "Especially not like this." His eyes flicked to the door again. "They know I'm here. They know someone rang the doorbell," I said. That's all. For a moment, we just stood there. The air between us was thick with years of resentment I'd only heard about in fragments late-night phone calls, hurried explanations, excuses wrapped in half-truths. Seeing him now in the daylight, he didn't look like a villain. He looked tired, worn down at the edges. "I hired a private investigator," he said quietly. I knew Denise would run. She always does when things get hard. I bristled at that, though part of me knew it wasn't entirely untrue. "And you think showing up here is the right move?" I asked. "I think," he said slowly, "that my children deserve to know I didn't disappear, that I didn't stop fighting for them." I closed my eyes for a brief moment, weighing the situation like a fragile object in my hands. The law, the kids, Denise's fear, my own unwilling role in all of it. "You can't see them today," I said finally. "They're not prepared for that. And neither am I." His shoulders sagged just slightly. "Then what?" "Then you leave," I said. "And if you want to talk, you do it through the proper channels. A lawyer, mediation, something that doesn't involve ringing my doorbell like this is a surprise visit." He studied me for a long second, then nodded. "I'll be back," he said. "Legally, I expect nothing less," I replied. When he walked away, his footsteps down the path sounded heavier than they should have. I stayed there until his car pulled away, then leaned against the door, my legs trembling. Inside, Lila was standing in the hallway, cereal bowl abandoned on the table. "Was that Daddy?" she asked, her voice small. I swallowed hard. "It was someone who knows your mom," I said gently. "Everything's okay." She nodded, though her eyes didn't quite believe me. That afternoon, I made phone calls, first to a family lawyer recommended by a friend, then to my mother, who went quiet when I told her Tom had been here. "This is serious, Marlene," she said. "You know that." "I do," I replied. "That's why I'm not pretending anymore." The liar was direct, kind in that no-nonsense way professionals sometimes are. She explained my position, my responsibilities, and my limits. She told me what Denise should have done. She told me what could happen next You may need to be prepared, she said, to advocate for the children's stability, regardless of what their parents decide. That sentence stayed with me. Advocate. That night, Denise called again. I told her everything about Tom, about the lawyer, about the fact that hiding wasn't protecting anyone anymore. He found them, she said, her voice cracking. He found me, I corrected. There's a difference, but it won't last. She cried then, not loudly, just a quiet unraveling on the other end of the line. I don't know how to fix this, she said. You start by coming back, I said. You face it. I'm not strong like you, she whispered. I closed my eyes. You don't have to be strong forever, I said. Just long enough to show up. The days that followed were tense, suspended in a waiting I couldn't escape. The kids settled into routine, school, homework, bedtime stories, but there was an undercurrent of uncertainty in everything we did. Caleb asked more questions now. Smarter ones. Are we staying here? He asked one night while I washed dishes. For now, I said honestly. Did Mom mess up again? He asked, not accusing. Just tired. I turned off the faucet and faced him. Your mom is human, I said. And humans make mistakes. Big ones sometimes. He nodded slowly, like he'd already come to that conclusion on his own. A week later, Denise came back to town. She didn't come to my house. Not at first. She called and asked if we could meet somewhere neutral. A coffee shop near the park. The one we used to go to when we were younger and needed to talk without being overheard. When I walked in and saw her sitting there, shoulders hunched, hands wrapped tightly around a paper cup, my heart clenched. She looked smaller somehow, older. She looked at me like I was both refuge and judge. I'm ready, she said before I even sat down. I'm ready to do this the right way. I believed her. But belief, I was learning, didn't erase consequences. Asterisk, we sat there for a long moment. The hum of the espresso machine filling the silence between us. Denise kept her eyes on the table, tracing the rim of her cup with one finger, the way she used to when she was nervous. I waited. If there was one thing I'd learned by then, it was that Russian Denise only made her retreat. I'm not asking you to fix this, she said finally. I just need you to stand with me. I folded my hands in my lap. Standing with you doesn't mean standing in front of you, I said gently. You have to face what's coming. She nodded, tears gathering but not falling. I know. We talked for over an hour. About the hearing she'd missed. About her fear of losing the kids. About Tom's new job and the way it made her feel like she was always one step behind, always about to be judged. She admitted she'd been warned by her own lawyer that running would only make things worse. She admitted she'd hoped time would somehow soften the situation. Time rarely does that. When we left the coffee shop, Denise didn't ask to see the kids right away. That, more than anything, told me she was thinking clearly for the first time in a long while. I want to do this right, she said again, standing beside her car. For them, the weeks that followed were some of the hardest I've ever lived through. Meetings with lawyers, mediation sessions that felt more like emotional autopsies. Tom was there, composed and prepared, his lawyer at his side. Denise showed up too, trembling but present. I sat behind her, a quiet witness. My presence both support and reminder. Caleb and Lila stayed with me through it all. At first. It was temporary, an agreement between the lawyers, a decision made in the name of stability. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, my home became their anchor. Their shoes lined up by the door, their drawings taped to my fridge, their laughter echoing down my hallway in a way it hadn't in years. There were hard days. Nights when Lila cried for her mother and I held her until sleep finally came. Mornings when Caleb shut down, his silence heavy with things he didn't yet have words for. I learned to listen without fixing, To answer honestly without burdening them with adult fears, the custody hearing was rescheduled. On the morning of the new date. Denise called me from the courthouse bathroom, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared," she said. "So am I replied. "But we're here. That counts." The judge listened to both sides, to evidence and testimony and the quiet truths that don't always fit neatly into legal language. I spoke when asked, not as an accuser, not as a defender, but as someone who had lived inside the situation long enough to see its shape. "I believe both parents love these children," I said, "but right now what they need most is consistency, safety, time." In the end, the decision wasn't perfect. No decision ever is. Shared custody, structured carefully. Denise required to attend counseling. Tom given expanded visitation. And for now, the children to remain with me during the school year until things stabilized. When the judge said it, Denise closed her eyes and cried. Tom nodded, jaw tight but accepting. I sat very still, feeling the weight of responsibility settle onto my shoulders. Afterward, in the hallway, Denise hugged me like she was holding on to the last solid thing in a shifting world. "I don't deserve you," she said into my shoulder. "No," I said softly, "but the kids deserve all of us doing better." The community found out in pieces. Whispers at school, concerned looks from neighbors. Some people praised me, others questioned my involvement. I let them talk. I'd learned by then that living right mattered more than being understood. Tom began picking the kids up every other weekend. He was careful, polite, trying. Denise started therapy and took a local job, smaller, steadier. She came by for dinners, helped with homework, rebuilt trust one conversation at a time. It wasn't smooth. There were setbacks, missed appointments, old arguments resurfacing. But there was also progress. Slow, imperfect, real. One evening, months later, I watched Caleb help Lila with a puzzle on the living room floor. Denise sat on the couch reading. The lamp cast a warm glow over the room, and for the first time in a long while, the house felt like it could exhale. Denise looked up at me then. Really looked. "Thank you," she said, "for not letting me disappear." I thought of that morning she drove away, the way the house had held its breath. "Sometimes," I said, "love means refusing to look the other way." That night, after everyone was asleep, I stood in the hallway and listened to the quiet. Not the tense quiet of waiting, but the settled kind. The kind that comes after hard truths have been spoken. I didn't know what the future would look like. None of us did, but I knew this. Secrets don't protect children. Presence does, and sometimes the family you save isn't the one you were born into, it's the one you choose to stand up for.